How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Test, Fail, Learn, Grow. I'm your host this week, Paul Riedner. I'm usually behind scenes for this, but as you know, Adam House is off chaperoning his son's senior spring break trip, which sounds like a blast right now, Dominican Republic. So I'm taking over this week, and I have the honor of guiding today's conversation. It'll be an interesting one, especially for me. I'm sitting down with a close friend, someone who I served in the Army with, someone who's had a really kind of hyper growth and accelerated uh, trajectory in tech sales. And I'll explain a little bit more of that. His name is Nicolas Marr. But let me back up a little bit. This test, fail, learn, grow, we're really going into the behind the scenes stories and failures, the tests that we have to make when we're trying to make progress. And I love having people on to tell their story, something we can learn from, something that we can take home with us and give us a little bit of insight as we go through our week. So Nick and I go way back, as I explained, as U.S. Army deep sea divers. That's why I showed the picture of what I did on the pre-show there. But the man you're about to meet didn't stop testing himself when he left the military. He went on to become, let's call him a powerhouse in sales. He could sell refrigerators to Eskimos, I have no doubt. So he's been in the tech SaaS space for over, maybe 15 years now, playing key roles in 3 strategic liquidity events and racking up a whole stack of President's Club wins. And today, he's on a very different kind of mission. After years of high performance and hustle, Nick stepped away from the executive track to pursue something that he had been dreaming about all the way back when he was deployed to Iraq. And we'll get into this story a little bit. So this is really a story about what happens when you actually get what you set out to chase. So I want to welcome my good friend, Nick Marr, to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and incredibly grateful for the warm intro, and super stoked to see you out in front of the camera for this one, and glad to take part.
Yeah,
Let's
I,
jump in.
I appreciate that, Nick. And I wanted someone that I knew would have my back, and you're definitely, one of those guys. So, everyone that we invite on the show, we invite them to do this framework, this test, fail, learn, grow. And as you did. And so I have some notes here on, what story you wanted to get into. So when we talk about the test, it's a bold move, it's an experiment, it's a risk. And so set the table a little bit for us on your test that you want to walk us through.
Yeah, for sure. When I kind of put my nose to the grindstone after leaving the army, which was obviously a pretty big decision all in itself. We all had pretty cool jobs and good trajectory and opportunity there. I knew I wanted to take an unconventional path in business. Specifically, I wanted to get in and move, make a certain amount of money and create enough success in my business career where I was able to kind of step away early or earlier than most to kind of pursue an adventure driven lifestyle. And I had attended a maritime academy early as kind of my chosen way to go to college. See, and that was kind of the start of that idea of I wanted to do something different, and it's already somewhat cliche because selling software in itself is pretty cookie cutter, kind of straightforward. But ultimately, in my path through going to the Maritime Academy and successfully kind of becoming an Army diver and leading that story of life with you, I knew I wanted to kind of fall forward and do something different. And I wanted that freedom, and I've always been a voracious reader. And on a deployment, I picked up, and I believe it was a new book at the time, if I'm not mistaken, but it was wild. Cheryl Strayer had written the book, and there's a really famous movie that was made with Reese Witherspoon. But to me, it was my first exposure to what became kind of my North Star and my guiding goal in why I was so driven to kind of move through the business world in a shorter period of time. But specifically, it was that exposure to the Pacific Crest Trail that became what I think is the test we're here to talk about. And that, can I create enough momentum in my business career where I feel comfortable and responsible, air quotes, whatever that means, to step away and test to see if there was that profound happiness or sense of fulfillment I was looking for, in starting that journey of the Pacific Crest Trail. I don't know. Does that's a lot of words, brother.
No, that's good. I
does
mean,
that
I
give
want
me
to
a
know.
thesis?
It's good to get the backstory there, and I can only imagine the juxtaposition of reading that book while you're deployed to Iraq.
Yeah, yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. There's an element of escapism that exists in a lot of what I was doing, in both my time, spent with you in the military in Iraq and other places like that, and my time in the business world, and that, yeah, I mean, just reading the book and understanding there was a place I could go intellectually and emotionally that allowed me to operate at the highest levels, but mentally know that there was something in the future or a place. I think it was a good tactic that allowed me to remain present. But I don't know, it sounds kind of hokey, maybe a bit woo woo, but it became almost my walking meditation, pun intended, to
Hmm.
you know allow my mind to have some, like I said, the point of it being that juxtaposition, or see if I was going to find that peace in nature, or that excitement that I would have doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and having a goal in mind to accelerate, what you can accomplish so that you can step away and follow your dream here comes with some cost to it.
Yeah.
Did you, and
Yeah.
how did you identify where you would take that break and press pause, like, I'm good for now, I need to, was it a need to or a want to at that point?
No, man, you're teasing out the parts that are definitely were the things that I like, the things I could have done better. There was not a linear goal saying if I get to this time, this number, this place. It just became, a function of, uh, grow at all cost, grow at all cost. And I think thematically in my life, that fixation and or that allegiance to a very hyper, like, singular, just high degree of singularity. I want to get promoted. I want to make money. I want to show value to customers. I want to run and lead and work with high performance teams. To your point, it does. It comes at a cost. I mean, there's a reason in elite military units, mental health is of probably, the top of the list with huge concerns these days. Statistics with family and divorce are not do not paint a pretty picture. And as as I sit here with you today, I'm unmarried. I don't have kids. I may have a lot of time. There may be some cool Instagram, photos, but there were certainly huge sacrifices, along the way. I mean, I can say, and it's not a cool thing to say, and I think everybody kind of has to kind of pick their own path and experience it for what it will. But I mean, there were years that I never really functionally took a week off of work, or even if I took a week off, I was, working. And I'm not saying that, again, to self, to make that sound good, or like that's the path. I'm here to just talk about the results of, hyper focus and singularity. And to your point, it is not a path of ease, but it can be a very good path if the outcome is deemed worth the process.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I think, so let's start to get into the next phase, which we would call the fail, but that's really just the experiment itself, I think, and what happens along the way. So, you obviously can't go from working 20 hours a day to hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which is like 26,000. How far is that? 2,600 miles?
Yeah, it's 2,650 miles, and I assure you, in all of what we were talking about, this is a dialogue and a tale of failing forward. This isn't a highly calculated, mission driven PowerPoint. That's simply not how I live my life. I kind of subscribe to the idea that one can achieve anything if they're willing to give everything and put that goal first. And that's I have found success in that. And to the point, I think I'm kind of skipping us back to there's certainly costs, mental health, or family, friends, times missed. But if there's value in telling people that it can be done, you can do it, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. I think there is value there for people. But in terms of failing forward, no, you definitely. I do not suggest walking directly out of the office and and hiking 2,650 miles. And I will tell you a story in a minute about me doing that last week and getting a little bit beat up outdoors. No, so when I exited my corporate career, I kind of stepped away, hair on fire, as per my usual style. Specifically, I immediately, and I'd been also thinking about this for a long time. I went to a very specific area in Thailand that's known for fitness camps, and everything there is fitness and health and kind of mental health, well-being, everything. It's called Soy Thai Fitness Street. You can look it up. It's an amazing place. Like, go if that's something you need in your life. It's a very economical way. But I went there 90 days, didn't have a single beer, stuck to my diet religiously. I just went there with like man on fire to clean up my physical and mental and spiritual health in preparation for the Pacific Crest Trail, and to just kind of test myself and see, where am I at physically, where am I at mentally. Yeah, we did some cool stuff when we were young as Army divers, but I've been sitting in front of a computer doing a little more yoga and happy houring than hard training. But so that was an incredible experience, though. Hit it really hard, and it was the first of many experiences during that time and to the present, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, of having this profoundly deep, cool feeling that I could envision something, achieve it, and find that success. And it was like, whoa, like, holy smokes. My business career, was over. And I think you touched on that. And I guess to take a step back, forgive me for those who are watching, but I do think this is important. There was no grand plan or special number when I was going to exit my corporate career. There became a time where it made a ton of sense. We'd had a third liquidity event. I had an incredible relationship with my leadership team, the PE firms that were backing us and working with us at that time. And they were just really, really supportive. I'd been there through a ton of transition. We'd seen a ton of growth, and it was like, I wouldn't call it a handshake departure. I'd call it like a huge hug departure. It was time. I was done. They needed somebody with new energy. And it was a stars aligned moment, but it came really, really quick. I mean, there was transition. We were in the middle of 2024 planning in Q4. I was set to present to investors in New York. I built the plan. Plan was great. Loved it. And it was just that moment where I'm kind of looking at my boss, who's a dear friend of mine. I've known him for, almost 20 years, the best man in his wedding. And I'm like, dude, I'm not the guy. And it was a very whoa moment of, he's looking at me like, dude, you're tired. Just relax. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not the guy to take this to the board. Like, you need somebody who is excited to do this next year. And I'm just sitting here, done, tired. This all happened, to give time and spatial context. This was like 3 days of like, okay. And it wasn't a manic decision.
And you knew it.
Talked about. Yeah, I knew it in my heart, but it was, you can't at a certain level in an organization, it's extremely uncouth and totally unproductive to discuss potential departure or things like that. And it wasn't something like, oh, I'm mad or something isn't right, or it wasn't that. It was just that, aha, it's time, and it was appropriate and respectful at that time to kind of talk to my boss and my leader, and it worked out, and it was really well received. But they went from like discussion to like, okay, let's sign out documents and start releasing packages and things like that in like 72 hours. Like, I think we discussed it on a Wednesday, and I was I was traveling for work, and like I remember my plane landing on Friday and me reading the exit documents pretty quickly to like, okay, let's start the weekend, like this is happening. And then within a few weeks of that, I was in Thailand training and applying for my PCT permit. So yeah, a little bit of neck break speed, but
yeah. In typical Marr fashion. That's awesome. Well, okay, so explain a little bit the what the Pacific Crest Trail is and what
Yeah.
your experience was with it.
Dude, 2,650 miles footpath, and it is specifically, it's an equestrian trail. Google it, look it up. It is incredibly interesting, but it is an unbroken footpath through California, Oregon, and Washington, from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. So you are walking through every major mountain range in the West, every kind of temperate ecosystem. Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it are just that. And and I non-ironically, I started yesterday of last year, so it took me 4.5 months roughly to walk it, but my start date was April 15th of last year, and I'm actually currently hanging out near the Pacific Crest Trail in Palm Desert, California, just to come out and see hikers and spend a little bit of spring out here. So that's kind of how much it had affected me positively, that I just kind of had to be near it this year.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what I know of where you grew up and where your mom lived and your connection to it was something more than a physical connection there, that it was something really tied to who you are and your spirit, it seemed. And so what were some of the biggest challenges you faced on that trip?
They were very different than I thought. I thought that the challenges would mostly be physically related. And knock on wood, awesome training in Thailand. Just totally great. I didn't have any physical issues. I did have a little bit of a dental issue we'll get to that caused me to have to take a week or two off trail. But specifically, dude, it was it was a really humbling experience to go from having a lot of employees and being oftentimes the center of attention and having big strategy plans. I don't know. I guess where I'm stammering to get to is it was a total loss of identity. It was
Hmm.
walking away. I mean, even when I was in Thailand training, it was just kind of had this feel that like, oh, I'm an executive on sabbatical on a wellness, going to put some pictures of me like, in really good shape on LinkedIn or Instagram. And when I was like the learning curve on something like the PCT, even for an experienced outdoors person, which I was not at. And I mean, I have a lot of days backpacking now, but I'm by no means an expert or had been an expert aside from a bunch of YouTube and research, which is incessant. I mean, learning every day, like sitting on a park bench and the world believing that you're homeless because of how you look, and you are, moving through the forest and using, things like that to, like at a core level, and to having people, the most random people that you would never think, teach you profound things, both mentally, physically. I mean, my hiking partner, amazing human being, was a 26-year-old ultra marathoner who taught me more about fitness and like managing your body in the backcountry. Her partner joined us to go through the Sierras, and their confidence in extreme snow conditions in early season that I found as challenging as anything we'd done in the military. Probably could do a whole separate cast on that. But just like I said, learning from young people, old people, every day, like just new things on how to make yourself more efficient, better, faster. So it was like full infant stage, and I had zero importance. I wasn't a member of an elite military team that people were watching out for. That I had a bunch of training. I wasn't part of an agile workforce with multiple cohorts. Fancy word for a bunch of people making me PowerPoints or doing things I needed so I could manage large initiatives and groups of people. Like none of that, man. You're just out there, and it's just a matter of are you gonna kind of put one foot in front of the other, and ultimately I did, and I'm extremely proud of that. But it was very humbling, and I think the biggest challenge ultimately was sitting in the forest going, okay, I thought I was going to have some, I thought this would lead to a profound aha experience where I knew my next steps in life, or I had some big epiphany, and it was definitely not there. It was in terms of that, but
Yeah, it sounds like
Still,
similar to joining the military or any, transition from any previous career where you scaled the mountain and now you go to the next thing and you're suddenly in the valley again and you have to rebuild those next skills that you need, that new identity or place on where you are in the world. All of that
yeah,
starts over, right?
yeah. No, it was complete reset, and again, I don't think I was prepared, because I moved so quickly, and I think I did that as a fear mechanism, because I knew if I slowed down and quitting my job, going to train in Thailand, going to the Pacific Crest Trail to hike, if I slowed down, and in all reality, I didn't slow down. For half the Pacific Crest Trail, I was averaging well over 25, 23 miles a day. Took my first zero when we got to the Sierras. Highly not, and I'm not saying that to self prophesize, like that's not normal, but it was part of like this probably decompression that we're ultimately talking about now. Is it
Hmm.
legitimately took me a year to slow down and and accept that control is a different beast, and to start to
Right.
actually be able to hear my inner voice, and I kind of to get what I wanted, which was to kind of see what's there when my work is not driving my identity. I just have to kind of go be a human being, and experience the world through that lens.
Yeah.
I had some big
And
learning, big, yeah.
well, part of that I'll imagine is the screen time and technology being removed to be able to hear that
Yeah.
inner voice. Let's move into the learn phase. I mean, you've been talking a little about it, but I love some of these things. Like, tell me about what this is. This we pack our fears.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So some of the monikers or euphemisms that are regularly said in the through hiking community are, I mean, they're total, they almost sound like Buddhist quotes or something, something you'd see, but they're so useful. One of them is we pack our fears. And so something we regularly do is do a shakeout, right? You're always dumping out your pack, managing your gear. This is your life. These are all of your possessions, and very different than a week long backpacking trip that most people have taken. You start to, your gear is it. It's all you have, and to that end, when you shake out your gear and you look at another's gear, and hopefully you're doing this with no ego, and you're looking to help people, or we just start to kind of check out what we're doing. You would get it from our time in the military. You move around in small units. Everybody's like, hey man, why are you doing that? I want to get better. I want to be faster. I want to be safer, like things like that. And so really, really similar. But ultimately, when you find something, you're like, that's interesting. And you ask somebody and you're hoping they tell you a cool reason, and it's just some hokey reason that they like carrying. Um, it you realize that the saying, though, we pack our fears, and it's typically directly tied to like what is giving that person anxiety, like what is it they fear could go wrong, or how are they perceiving like what they're doing in the wilderness, or their experience they're having. And for me, it was water and food, and I think a little bit was probably PTSD from the army, specifically water, like how much we would carry, how much forced hydration, dude. And people were like, wow man,
Right.
you're very safe. And honestly, I do not regret carrying the water more than once. I was able to give hikers some water, and I was always comfortable. And up until recently, I had never had an issue, and it wasn't water related, but heat related. And I was able to safely solve a heat related issue for myself with extra water. So, still kind of whatever there, but food, man. And I don't know why, but whatever. It just, not to go down a rabbit hole on that, but yeah, what we pack our fears. And like I said, ultralight backpacking is very light these days. You'd be shocked at how light the gear is and how comfortable the setups are. Yeah, it was a big, big takeaway is we hold on to our fears, man, and they probably prevent us from moving forward efficiently. And they linger. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a ton there. I love that. And how does that relate to the Sierra? So, I mean, we don't have time to get into like all of the stories that you have, but
Yeah.
this seems like the Sierra portion was critical.
Yeah, it was big time. I would consider this year's to be exactly what I was looking for, or quintessential like nucleus experience on that trip, which was just way out of your comfort zone, somewhat scared, if not totally scared, or jokingly what they call in the outdoor world type two fun. Which type two fun, for any you aren't don't know, is it doesn't mean you're having fun at the time. It means it's fun to talk about it over a beer later. But yeah, super cold, wet. Food is an interesting equation because when you move through the Sierras with high snow, or early in the season, as the group I was with chose to do, which I would not do again, but it was absolutely the coolest thing, and incredible experience. But it's an equation. How far can I move? How many calories? And where are my bailout points? And where are the next place I can resupply? And ultimately, the heavier you carry it, the slower you go, the more out time you're exposed, and the longer between your resupplies. So it's almost like there's levers there to, like a business. It becomes like a business equation, and so when you overpack food, it slows you down, or you need much more calories when you're up there. And ultimately, I did not run out of food this year. Is the takeaway. And my crew and up there and I were eating super well. And to this day, I really struggle with it. And I'm going on a really cool guided backpacking trip with a huge, well-named guide at the end of this month. And I look forward to getting some coaching on why. And if not, bro, we'll just go to therapy.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. I'm glad you survived the Sierras, and it sounds incredible. We're not going to get to cover everything, but a couple of things that struck me. You mentioned the impact, we're in this growth phase. Like you notice the impact it's had on you call it your perception of value. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. An interesting thing I've noticed about myself since stepping away from the career we've discussed and doing the hiking and I don't know if this is like inflationary, or I just noticed that when I see a person or a thing that provides a high degree of value outside of regardless of the amount of money or attention they're getting, I am profoundly more grateful. And I think it is a function of being present and taking a year off to literally slow my mind and body down and stuff myself in nature and feed myself healthy food and do all those, cliche things we do to try to make ourselves feel better. But a really, really strong positive takeaway is just how, when I see, like I said, a person or a service, a business, it gets me excited again. And I don't know if that's going to be part of my future journey, because it's a little, I'm open to exciting offers or corporate world. I've looked at some outdoor adventure guiding stuff that's landed on my plate, just working with veterans, and so open. But the point I'm making is, ultimately I think it comes from seeing how fast business can move in the corporate world, and how little value sometimes transacts, and how little we cared because it was bottom line, profit, grow, scale, which are all effective business modalities, and I would never deny that. But to step away from that and see when when humans are out there caring, and there's authenticity, and there's a product, whatever it might be, that brings value to other humans, I just puts a huge smile on my face, man.
Well,
I don't know. I think, man, I'm
man.
saying, yeah.
I love it, and I've been super excited about talking to you since you got back from your trip. I know they don't turn into exactly what we think they are, but they're always something valuable to process our past, to think about, create space for our future. And I'm really glad that you went on it. And I'm excited for what's next for you. And to everyone listening, next week, Adam will be back for another Test, Fail, Learn, Grow. We're going to jump over to our community call and continue the conversation. And if you haven't subscribed to our Substack, that's heating up. It's houseofbricks.substack.com. And your fears are heavy, your story is yours, and you don't have to climb the mountain yourself. So we're here to help, and I just want to encourage you to take bold risks and learn from them. So Nick, thank you so much for joining. Any last words for the audience?
Singularity is highly effective in achieving your goals. I highly suggest doing it in moderation, and you don't have to walk the Pacific Crest Trail. Your goal can be to feed your kids a healthy dinner, or to walk around the block, and doing that is your own goal that you've envisioned and that you've achieved, and it can be your singularity.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
See you, everybody.